Hey guys, what is up? I'm Dr. Pradeep and I'm preparing for NEET PG now since 1 year, and it feels I don't know how many ages. As we all know, the NEET PG and INICT both are postponed, and with that, not having any deadline or target, it feels. And in this low serotonin stage, I find very hard to get that enthusiasm back, and for that matter, to do anything, especially studying. And obviously the time has been hard for everyone, especially for the people who are out there, the doctors who are working as COVID warriors. And also I feel for the people who are also in there, like us PG aspirants. So I really thought of just giving my view of some of the important topics of some subjects, and also covering the most important things which are tougher for me, and I hope for everyone, so that it can help me also and you also in case you're watching it. And one of the reason of doing it is to not get static in this competition, because the amount of competition is too much, and if we just get static, I feel we'll just get swept out of the race. So let's see how it goes. And for the record, I'm not any topper or something. Just to tell you, I have got 4000 rank in INICT. Yeah, and that's it. And one more reason to do this is I feel if some of the things, especially the tough topics, if it is told by one of the aspirants or batchmates, I feel it's very easy to understand this. And at the same time, you need guidance of the professors to teach us, so it can just be taken as a revision, like in a free time or something, just to motivate yourself. I feel we get more motivated by our own competition ahead of some senior or like some a higher authority is telling us or motivating us to study. And one more thing, these videos can help us in the form of support, because from I feel at this time I'm lacking like the socialization which comes as a support in your life, and which you need actually at the most right now. So in this video, we'll be trying to covering all the important things related to carbohydrates and their cycle. So the first thing I think which is very important to understand the broad concept of carbohydrate is the cycle of the fasting and feeding. So the first phase is early fasting, which lasts only 16 hours. Then we have fasting, which lasts from 16 to 48 hours. Then third is we have prolonged fasting, which is also called as starvation, which lasts 2 to 5 days. Then we have prolonged starvation, which lasts for more than 5 days. So as we go down, we will be having the cycle of the body will be start shifting from glycogenolysis, then gluconeogenesis, then lipolysis, then proteolysis. And the same thing happens in the diabetes mellitus also, if you can correlate. So the first is in the glycolysis, which will be happening in the liver and the muscle. Second phase, which was fasting phase from 16 to 48 hours. Then gluconeogenesis will start happening with the help of oxaloacetic acid, and also from the Cahill's and Cori cycle from the liver and muscles. Then we have third phase again, which is prolonged fasting, early starvation, 2 to 5 days. There the lipolysis will start happening. Triacylglycerol will start splitting into the fatty acid, and glycerol fatty acid will go into acetyl coenzyme, and this acetyl coenzyme will start forming the ketone body. It can't go to Krebs cycle because the oxaloacetic acid we have used in the gluconeogenesis in the second phase. So so body can't go into the Krebs cycle. So that's why we can't form energy in the Krebs cycle in the third phase. This is very important to understand. And the next thing which we need to know in this is when we take the food, the blood glucose start increasing in our body. So insulin actually dephosphorylize the enzyme which is needed in the metabolism, and vice versa for the glucagon. Glucagon will phosphorylase the enzyme. This is very basic to understand that glucagon will be doing all the function which will be needed when the blood glucose will be down. So as we learned in the first phase, all the whatever is happening in the fasting, early fasting, starvation, all the things which will be done by glucagon with the help of phosphorylation enzyme. So it will phosphorylize the enzyme. So all the glycogenolysis or gluconeogenesis will be done by glucagon, even lipolysis. And on the other side, insulin will form glycogenesis, lipogenesis, proteogenesis. All things will be done by insulin, by dephosphorylation. So these two things are very important: dephosphorylation and phosphorylation, and all the cycle where glucagon will act and where insulin will act. So in fat state, glucose will be preferable, except So the next thing is which organ prefers which fuels in the body. So for one thing is RBC and brain will always use glucose, doesn't matter what the state of body is. So in the fed state we have glucose, we already have glucose in the body, so body will use glucose, doesn't matter what it is. But an RBC and brain anyways is using glucose. But one exception is heart uses fatty acid even in the fed state. Okay, so like you would be knowing, we use in pharmacology we would have studied the drug which inhibits the fatty acid oxidation we use in the ischemia, so that body can go in glucose metabolism. I hope you can relate that thing to this thing. So that's next important thing is which organ prefers which fuels in the body. So remember, first rule is RBC and brain, doesn't matter what phase of the body metabolism is, they will always prefer glucose. So in the fed state, body will use glucose, and RBC and brain anyways is using glucose. But one exception is heart, even in fed state, it uses free fatty acid. In pharmacology, you would have read in MI and ischemia, we give the drug trimetazidine, which is fatty acid oxidation inhibitor. This is the reason we give, because even in fed state heart is using fatty acid, so we inhibit the metabolism of fatty acids. We can we can reduce the oxygen and workload mismatch which has happened in the ischemia. And the second phase of the metabolism will be in the fasting phase. In the fasting phase, remember, the preferred fuel is fatty acids, and anyways brain and glucose, doesn't matter what the cycle is using glucose. Okay. And the third phase is starvation. In the starvation, you need to remember is the preferred fuel is fatty acid and ketone bodies both. But we all know liver produces ketone bodies but never uses ketone bodies. So even in the fasting phase, liver will use fatty acid. It can't use ketone bodies because it just forms ketone bodies. And heart prefers ketone bodies in the starvation. And RBC and brain is anyways using glucose even in the starvation. So in the enzyme we have 7 categories. First is oxidoreductase, which is very common and everybody knows about it. Oxidoreductase, dehydrogenase, oxidase and all. And the second is transferase. Transferase has one of the most important enzyme from the protein, that is transaminase, which is kinase, and it actually transfer amino acid in the exchange of keto acid. And also transmethylase also comes in that. And the third is hydrolase. From its name, it's quite easy to comprehend. It adds water and break the bond. So all the peptide bond, carbohydrate bond, nucleic acid bond are broken by this class of enzymes. So protease, amylase, maltase, endonucleases, they all are breaking protein, carbohydrate and nucleic acid bond respectively. So the fourth category we have is lyase group. It breaks bond but it doesn't add water. The function is quite similar to the last we discussed, but it breaks without adding water. And all the lyase which ends with lyase belongs to this category, but not necessarily all. So we have enolase, aconitase, which will come in the glycolysis, which is not quite important. But one of the important enzyme which is very important in the metabolism belong to this category is decarboxylase. So in the decarboxylation we have simple and complex. Simple is functionally also very simple in metabolism. It'll convert glutamine to GABA, histidine to histamine. So it is a simple decarboxylase. But complex decarboxylase are the most important enzyme in the metabolism. They are decarboxylase, but it does not belongs to lyase family. It belongs to first, because with the decarboxylase it also does oxidation and reduction. Examples will be pyruvate dehydrogenase, alpha keto dehydrogenase, and also branching amino acid keto dehydrogenase, which is, I think, these are the most important enzymes in the whole metabolism of the carbohydrate and proteins and nucleic acids. And the fifth category we have isomerase, is very quite simple. And sixth, which is also very important, is ligase. And as from the name which we can comprehend, it will form something. All the enzymes we discussed before that, they don't form, they break. This is the category which forms. So synthetase will belong to this category, all the synthetase, and all the synthetase requires ATP also. And another important enzyme which belong to this ligase category is carboxylase. So in carboxylase require biotin, which is a vitamin, and also ATP with it. But there are some exception to it, which we need to remember, is biotin independent carboxylation, which is CPS 1 and 2. CPS means carbonyl phosphatase synthetase, which is involved in the pyrimidine and urea metabolism. So let's start the cycles. The first, which is obviously the quite important, is glycolysis. Glycolysis starts when the glucose and when you have high glucose in the blood, and and the regulation, the broad concept I told in the first part. So when the glucose entered into a cell, it converts into glucose 6-phosphate with the help of glucokinase and hexokinase. So these two enzymes are quite important. For the first step is glucose converted into glucose 6-phosphate by the help of enzyme glucokinase or hexokinase, and it is an ATP requiring step and first irreversible step. So there's some difference between the glucokinase and hexokinase. Both are doing the same reaction, which is very important to understand. Glucokinase enzyme is inducible enzyme, and it is not inhibited by the product, that is glucose 6-phosphate. On the other hand, hexokinase is not an inducible enzyme. It's always activated, and it is inhibited by glucose 6-phosphate. Next step is glucose 6-phosphate will convert into fructose 6-phosphate, and the next step will be fructose 6-phosphate will be converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphonate with the help of PFK1, which is very important step. It is a second irreversible step, ATP requiring step. So these two things are very important. Phosphate will be converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate with the help of PFK1, which is very important enzyme, and it requires ATP, and it is also a irreversible step. And one of the regulatory thing which happens here is fructose 6-phosphate can be converted into fructose 2,6-bisphosphate with the help of PFK2. And how it happens is, in the presence of insulin will favor the enzyme PFK2, and it will form fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. And what fructose 2,6-bisphosphate will do is, it will favor glycolysis. So in reverse, it will just favor the PFK1, and it will form fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So glycolysis will go on. But on the other hand, in the presence of glucagon, what happens is, fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase enzyme will get activated. So it will convert fructose 2,6-bisphosphate back to fructose 6-phosphate. And what fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase enzyme does is, it will activate gluconeogenesis. So it will inhibit PFK1. So glycolysis will stop and gluconeogenesis will start, which happens normally by other mechanism also in the presence of glucagon. And the next step will be fructose 1,6-bisphosphate will convert into dihydroxyacetone and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which is carried out by aldolase. Aldolase, as we just did in enzyme, it belongs to class 4 enzyme. Now two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate will be converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, which is an oxidoreductase enzyme which will be involved in this. So NADH will be produced. So two molecules of NAD will be converted into 2 molecules of NADH, which is an energy producing step. So the next will be 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate will be converted into 3-phosphoglycerate, which is an ATP producing step in the by substrate level, which is direct formation of ATP without NADH. So the next step will be the 3-phosphoglycerate will be converted into 2-phosphoglycerate, and obviously it requires an mutase enzyme, isomerase enzyme. And then 2-phosphoglycerate will be converted into phosphoenol pyruvate with the help of enolase enzyme, which we read belongs to class 4 enzyme, which is lyase enzyme. Last step will be phosphoenol pyruvate will be converted into pyruvate, which is again irreversible step. This is the third irreversible step, which will be quite important when we'll discuss gluconeogenesis. Okay, and this is also forming ATP. So we have one NADH forming step, 2 ATP forming step, 2 ATP consuming step. But from dry hydroxyacetone and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, we have 2 molecules of everything. So 2 NADH, 2 ATP, 2 ATP, 4 ATP plus 2 NADH will be forming 5 ATP. So we have 9, which will be minus 2, which we used in the first step. We have 7 ATP total in the glycolysis. We have 7 ATP total in the glycolysis. In aerobic pyruvate will be in the anaerobic glycolysis. Pyruvate will be converted into lactate, which uses one NADH with the help of lactate dehydrogenase enzyme. So one NADH will be cancelled out. So we are left with the 4 ATP minus 2 ATP, 2 ATP in anaerobic glycolysis. And the next step after this will be the fate of pyruvate. Pyruvate can be converted into lactate with the help of lactate dehydrogenase, or it can be converted into acetyl coenzyme A with the help of PDH, or it can also be converted into alanine with the help of transaminase enzyme, or it can be converted into oxaloacetate with the help of pyruvate carboxylase enzyme. Right now we'll stick to the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A, and then acetyl coenzyme A going to Krebs cycle. So the pyruvate will convert into acetyl coenzyme A with the help of pyruvate dehydrogenase, and which is a multi-enzyme complex. So there we have 3 multi-enzyme complex enzyme. We have 3 multi-enzyme complex in our body. First is pyruvate dehydrogenase, second is alpha keto dehydrogenase, third is branch chain keto amino acid dehydrogenase. So all this multi-enzyme complex has thymine, lipomide, NAD, FAD, and it requires coenzyme A. So that's why they're called as multi-enzyme, and they also they belong to first class of enzyme, that is oxidoreductase, but they also has a complex decarboxylase activities. After the acetyl coenzyme will combine with oxaloacetate acetate to form the citrate, then will form the isocitrate, alpha ketoglutarate, then succinyl coenzyme, succinate, malate, then again oxaloacetate, and it will just keep on happening. I don't think the details are quite important. What is most important is the pyruvate dehydrogenase enzyme, alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase enzyme. These two enzymes from Krebs cycle are very important because they are multi-enzyme. The next cycle is the gluconeogenesis. I feel it is the most important cycle in the whole metabolism, and it's very easy to understand. So the three irreversible steps which we made the note in the glycolysis, we just need to use those three irreversible steps to just complete the whole gluconeogenesis. The first step which we discussed was the first step, the glucose 6-phosphate, glucose converting into glucose 6-phosphate. So somehow if we convert from glucose 6-phosphate back to glucose, it will be very useful in the gluconeogenesis. So how we can do is by using the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. Same with the next step, fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-phosphate. We have to go back. Fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase will convert fructose 1,6-bisphosphate to fructose 6-phosphate. And the third irreversible step was phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate. We have to convert pyruvate to phosphoenol pyruvate. This is a little complex. The last step, which is pyruvate converting into phosphoenol pyruvate, which is a irreversible step. How it happens is the pyruvate first has to convert into oxaloacetate with the help of pyruvate carboxylase, which happens in mitochondria. But after that, oxaloacetate has to move to cytoplasm, because for conversion of oxaloacetate to phosphoenol pyruvate requires a special enzyme, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, which is present in cytoplasm, and it also requires GTP. And from the name, it is kinase enzyme, so it is adding phosphate to the substrate, so it is phosphorylation reaction and also carboxylation reaction. So it has two properties in one enzyme. Before going further, we should be clear about it, like from where the pyruvate is coming, first of all, to do the gluconeogenesis. Because when we are in fasting state, we are doing gluconeogenesis. So what happens in fasting state, for example, exercising muscle will use glucose as an anaerobic metabolism. So glucose will convert into pyruvate, pyruvate will convert into lactate as an anaerobic glycolysis. So this lactate will go to liver. Liver will convert lactate to pyruvate, and this pyruvate will go in gluconeogenesis, will go into the mitochondria and further contribute to the gluconeogenesis, and then come back to cytoplasm as oxaloacetate. Then it will form phosphoenol pyruvate in cytoplasm, and then phosphoenol pyruvate will go back in the reverse reaction as in gluconeogenesis to form the glucose, which all the step happens in cytoplasm. So next in the turn is the glycogenesis. What is glycogenesis? Is forming of glycogen from glucose, and it's very easy to interpret. Like insulin will be used or glucagon will be used from the basic which we did in starting. So let's just go directly into so if we think how do we form glycogen from glucose, so we would need primer in between the cycle. So what happens in starting is glucose will be converted into glucose 6-phosphate, which is very basic. Then we'll convert glucose 6-phosphate to glucose 1-phosphate, and now here we add this UTP. Then it will react with the enzyme pyrophosphorylase. What pyrophosphorylase will do is it will remove 2-phosphate from it. So UTP 2-phosphate has only 1-phosphate now. So it will react with G1P, glucose 1-phosphate, which we formed in the last step. So it will form UDP with the glucose. So we have UDP glucose now. Now we will need primer in the form of glycogenin. So glycogenin is a kind of tree, and here we'll just keep adding the branches in the form of glucose by the help of UDP glucose. So UDP glucose will keep donating its glucose to the glycogenin. So by this step we'll end up with the glycogen. So the next we have is the glycogenolysis. So what happens in glycogenolysis is from glycogen we are going to glucose. So it's very easy to understand. If we consider it like this is the glycogen which has branch, and this is the straight chain. So first enzyme will come, which is glycogen phosphorylase. So it will cut from the branches. So it will stop cutting when there are only four of the glucose left in the branch. So it will release the glucose in the form of glucose 1-phosphate. And then comes the function of we have to remove the branches. So then comes the function of a very important enzyme, which is 1,4,1,4 glucone transferase and 1,6 glucosidase. It does is 1,4,1,4 glucose transferase. So 4 glucose are left in the branching part of the glycogen. So it will just keep removing this glucose and transfer it to this straight chain, the straight glycogen, whatever it is. And only one glucose will be left at this branching, and then 1,6 glucosidase enzyme will act and cut from here and glucose will release. The third step will be the glucose 1,6-phosphate, which we got in the first enzyme with the help of glycogen phosphorylase. It has to convert into glucose. So how it will convert glucose 1,6-phosphate to glucose is, if we can remember glycogenesis, in the starting step we use this enzyme, we just have to reverse it. So glucose 1,6-phosphate we first will convert into glucose 6-phosphate. How? By the use of mutase, which is isomerase enzyme. Now we have glucose 6-phosphate. It's very easy to convert to glucose now. We have used this enzyme in gluconeogenesis also. And this is glucose 6-phosphatase. Is one twist here. As we all know, all these reactions are happening in the cytoplasm and mainly in the liver and muscles. Most of the reaction, except in the carbohydrate metabolism, Krebs cycle happens in mitochondria. Okay, so this glucose 6-phosphate, which is converting glucose 6-phosphate to glucose so that glucose can be released into the blood, it is present only in the liver. It is not present in the muscle. So if when the glycogenolysis is happening in the muscle, the cycle will stop at glucose 6-phosphate. So the significance is muscle cannot contribute its glucose to the whole body, but liver can give in the time of fasting, liver can give its glucose to the whole body. And even in the liver, this enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase is present in endoplasmic reticulum, and that's why we see the next which we will do, glycogen storage disease. One of the disease is lysosomal storage enzyme because of this enzyme, which is Pompe's disease. So let's do the most important thing in the carbohydrate metabolism is glycogen storage disease, which is very clinical relevant topic. So just now we did like glycogenolysis and glycogenesis. These both cycles happen in liver and muscles, except one step which happens in both cycle happens in liver and muscles in the cytoplasm, except one step which happens in lysosome. So these diseases, glycogen storage disease, will be revolving around liver and muscle. So let's do the first liver storage disease. In the glycogen storage disease, the three diseases are very important: von Gierke disease, Porres disease, and Anderson disease. These three are very important in the glycogen storage disease. Let's just do this first. So what happens in von Gierke disease is the enzyme which is deficient is glucose 6-phosphatase, which was used in glycogenolysis in the last step when the liver has to release the glucose. So when liver can't release glucose, what happens is will start having hypoglycemia. The whole there will not be glucose in the blood because liver can't release the glucose in the fasting state. In the feeding state there will be glucose in the blood, but in the fasting state liver can't release the glucose, there will be hypoglycemia. So what happens is glucose 6-phosphate will increase in the liver, which will be converted into back to glycogen. So there will be increased glycogen in the liver in this disease. So the increased glucose 6-phosphatase will be converted and will go into HMP shunt pathway, which will be converted into purines and pyrimidines, which will cause hyperuricemia. And also the glucose 6-phosphate in the liver can go into glycolysis and convert into lactic acid, which will cause lactic acidosis, which in further will cause ketosis. Now, obviously clinical feature will be there will be massive hepatomegaly. One of the differentiating feature from the other glycogen storage will be there won't be any splenomegaly, but there will be renomegaly, which is very important differentiating feature from other glycogen storage disease. That renomegaly is present in von Gierke disease. So the next important is the Porres disease, which is also called as Forbes diseases or limit dextronosis. It is a type 3 glycogen storage diseases, and enzyme which is deficient in this disease is debranching enzyme. So the glycogen which is converted into glucose cannot be converted to glucose. It will be stopped in between. So obviously there will be hypoglycemia and hepatomegaly, all the glycogen storage typical feature, but the differentiating feature will be there will be splenomegaly, unlike von Gierke disease, but there won't be any renomegaly. And one of the most differentiating feature will be progressive liver cirrhosis. But this liver cirrhosis can be reversible, which will be quite important feature to differentiate between the next disease which we will discuss. The next is type 4 glycogen storage disease, which is also called as Anderson disease or amylopectinosis. In this disease we have deficient of branching enzyme. In the last disease we have deficient of debranching enzyme. In this we have branching enzyme. So glucose cannot be converted into glycogen, right? Again there will be some intermediate which will increase because of the deficiency of branching enzyme, because glycogen will be formed but it won't get its branch. So there will be some intermediate which will increase. Again the hepatomegaly, hypoglycemia will be there. Most differentiating feature will be progressive liver cirrhosis, portal hypertension, patient may die by 5 years. This is very important. And the next is muscle glycogen storage diseases. Muscle glycogen storage, we have two varieties in which there is a heart involvement, in which heart is not involved. In which first is Pompe's disease, in which there is a heart involvement. It is a type 2 glycogen storage. The Pompe's disease, it is a type 2 glycogen storage disease, and it is a muscle involvement majorly. So one of the most differentiating feature of the Pompe's disease is the involvement of heart. Wherever there is a heart involvement in glycogen storage diseases, The answer should be Pompe's disease, and the enzyme which is deficient is acid maltase, since it is a lysosomal storage disease. So the enzyme is obviously acid maltase. The next is McArdle's disease, which is a type 5. It is a muscle type of glycogen storage disease, and it does not involve heart. This is how you differentiate from the Pompe's to McArdle's. These are the two main type of glycogen storage disease in the muscle. Since they are involving muscles, hypoglycemia will not be prominent feature, but one of the differentiating feature of McArdle's is wind phenomena. When you exercise, you get pain because the muscle is not able to convert glycogen to glucose. But you rest, the pain goes away again. You can start doing exercise. Why? Because the liver is fine. Liver can provide glucose by the glycogen.